Well, there's been yet another twist in the visa cancellation saga that has gripped world tennis and turned Serbian tennis star Novak Djokovic into a standard bearer for COVID freedoms. The Australian Border Force is investigating whether he incorrectly declared he'd not travelled and would not do so for a fortnight before his flight to Australia. Well, questions have been raised about that declaration completed by an agent for Djokovic, with social media posts seemingly showing he was in Belgrade on Christmas Day before flying to Australia from Spain on the 4th of January. That would mean that Djokovic did in fact fail to tell the precise truth on his immigration forms, making them null and void. Well, joining me now, the Australian MP and leader of the United Australia Party, that is Craig Kelly MP, who's taken the time to be there before the camera at a very, very unsocial hour, for which, Mr Kelly, we thank you very much indeed. Has this story still got legs in Australia?
Look, it does. We're expecting a decision by our immigration minister today. He actually has a discretionary power to revoke that visa. That decision is to be made today. But I'd expect, after the embarrassment this has caused our nation, after the scathing decision by the judge criticising our federal government, I think that he will apply common sense and allow Novak Djokovic to stay here in Australia and compete in our prestigious Australian Open.
You would certainly hope that common sense is applied here. If somebody applies, however, Craig, the letter of the law, if you tell an untruth on your declaration form coming into the country, theoretically at least, you may be punished with up to 12 months in prison. We're not going to go there, are we?
Look, I don't think so. And Mr Djokovic would have to explain this himself, but where I look at it, it says the word travelled. Now, what's the definition of travelling? Does that mean you travel across the street? Either you travel across from one town to another? I think if you're in Europe and you're travelling from Europe to Australia, he may have interpreted that was travelling outside of Europe, but that's up to him to explain. But that's really a very minor issue. The reality is that when he turned up here in Australia, as the judge said, he had all the paperwork done. He had the correct medical exemptions, and yet he was treated like someone that turned up with a couple of kilos of hashish in their bags. He was held overnight in Melbourne Airport, interrogated for hours on end. Remember, this is someone that's been invited into our country to play in a Grand Slam event, and I think most Australians are actually disgusted by the conduct and the treatment that he's received.
Very, very briefly, we're almost out of time, I'm afraid to say, Craig Kelly. Is this something that we, outside of Australia, don't quite get? The way that you get a conflict of tension between Victoria State, in this instance, and the federal government?
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, when you British set us up down here, you divide us up into different states, and we still have those state governments have a lot of power compared to the federal government. So we have state premiers trying to wield to see who can be the most authoritarian, who can be the most powerful. The Victorian state government has been the worst of them all. They've had more lockdowns in the city of Melbourne than anywhere else in the world. And that's just been a disgrace in Victoria, what's happened. It is all local politics. There's been a disgrace by both the major parties at the blame here, and they've embarrassed Australia. But I think most Australians want to get on. And just wait, when Djokovic walks onto centre court, you will see what Australians actually think. And I believe he will get a standing ovation.
Really interesting to see, won't it? Craig Kelly, MP, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.